Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George Ramsbottom. I'm the president of the Agricultural Science Association. And this evening's webinar is all about organics. The market for organics has doubled over the last 10 years from around 20 billion in the EU to about 43 billion. It's second now only to the US at this stage in terms of the value that it's worth. And I suppose it's a slice of the European market that we're after in Ireland. There's substantial demand for dairy in particular, and it has huge potential for further growth. About 50% of our animal feed is imported, and about 70% of our fruit and veg for the organic sector is also imported. And there's no processor in the country for butter or infant formula at this stage. From the departmental perspective, there's been a 50% increase in funding under cap between 23 and 27, and it'll be worth over 270 million. And the target is to increase the area of land farmed organically from 2% to 7.5%. And we're interested in see who has the capacity and willingness to take on this market and drive this growth that's available to us. This webinar tonight is being chaired by Odile Evans. Odile is an assistant agricultural inspector, and she's lined up a very strong panel to talk to you here tonight. Rather than me introducing those people, I'll just introduce our first speaker, Seamus McMenamin. Seamus is a sector manager with Bord Bia, and he focuses in on the organic side of the house. Seamus will deliver our first presentation, and then Odile will take over to chair the rest of the session. I'd like to thank Odile for organising the session, our speakers for contributing, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you very much. It's over to you now, Seamus, and you can lead off with your first presentation.
No worries. Thank you, George. I'll just share my screen here. Thanks very much for that, George, and thanks to Odile for inviting me to talk this evening. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm just going to set out some of the key findings that we've, the Bord Bia have had some recently commissioned research into the organic market. So I'm going to focus on the organic market trends in Ireland, and then I'm going to take a bit of a wider look then at the UK and the EU markets and the value of those markets. In 2020, we've also done a bit of work on the consumer attitudes to organic produce, so we'll touch on that. And then at the very end, we'll look at what are the next steps then from here. So in terms of the value of the organic market, we are in 2020, the total sales from the sector were valued at 235 million. There was exceptional growth of nearly 18% between 2019 and 2020. Just driven primarily by COVID and a shift towards more natural production and the consumer looking for maybe what they perceived as safer food. So you'll see there's been upward growth in the organic sector since 2015. So annual growth was 6%, 7%, 8%, and then up 18% last year. And it is expected to continue to grow just at more modest levels as we move on. So in terms then of our share of sales, this is by value of the organic market. I've just put up here the sales in 2015 and the sales then in 2020, just to show that there's been very little change in the proportion of the organic sales per category. Fruit and veg is by far the biggest category and accounts for 41% of organic sales, and dairy is next. So between the dairy and the fruit and veg, they account for nearly 2/3 of total organic sales. The next thing we'll look at just is the import by some categories. As you'll see, for the majority of categories, your seafood, your dairy, your beef, your lamb, and your eggs, there's a very small proportion of the organic produce that is imported. We're pretty much self-sufficient in all of these. Now it is driven by supply and demand, and there is some seasonality. I suppose particularly with some of the lamb in particular, just it's only available at certain times of the year. Now this is prevalent. Then if we look at the fruit and veg and cereals categories, we're very reliant on imports in those categories. 70%, as George alluded to earlier. of our fruit and veg is imported, and then just over 60% of our 60% of our cereals. And this does show like there's opportunity for growth if there is higher production here, and so the demand for organic produce will be driven by supply and demand, and the supply is an issue at the minute, just in terms of just meeting the needs of retailers and major outlets. So Irish retail sales, then this just looks at what was sold through the retail sales Kantar data, so it just looks specifically at retailers. You'll see that in the 52 weeks up to the end of October 2021, the value of sales in retail increased by almost 3%, or 5.8 million. Now, it's been quite positive overall spends increase. There's been an increase in price, yes. There's been an increase in the volume per buyer. The number of buyers has increased slightly, and the volume per trip or number of products that were organic in your shopping basket has increased as well. So it is actually all encouraging now. In the Irish market, is worth pointing out that it's driven primarily by an increase in spend rather than an increase in the price. Now, if we look at the relative performance by category, then this just pitches our organic sales by category against conventional sort of sales. So you'll see that for 2020, the sales grew by 2.7% in organic, but that was against 3.4% for total grocery. Now, if you look into some of the individual categories, there's some quite positive growth there. You'll see there that sales of organic meat were 4.2% versus 3.7% for conventional. Some other categories didn't perform as well, such as dairy. There, the conventional grew by 4%, and dairy was back by 2%. Now you'll see to the right of your screen there, there's some extremely strong growth recorded in poultry and fish as well, but it's growth from a very small base, so it's worth just highlighting that. So then we'll move on to who is the organic consumer. It tends to be our younger consumer. You'll see there that the pre-family accounts for more than a fifth of all organic sales in terms of value. Your young family then makes up a further 5.3% up to October 2021. So it tends to be your younger consumer, especially those with sort of increased levels of disposable income, that have a strong interest in organic produce. As you move into some of the other cohorts, it does decline slightly, but primarily it is driven by young buyers and middle families. So then, I suppose what most people are interested in is the potential future for growth for organics. The research that we've done recently gave us an annual growth rate of 9%. Now, this is different from the retail, because this takes in all categories, so your farm shops and your direct sales and that sort of thing. So it's showing an annual growth of 9%. Our market's expected to reach the value of 370 million by 2025, and food service currently accounts for a small proportion of organic produce, but it's expected to be a key driver as the recovery continues post-COVID. We'll just take a look now at the UK, which is sort of our closest market and perhaps our opportunity. Now, similar to the the first thing maybe worth pointing out is that in 2015 and 2016, you'll see that there was a decline in organic sales. That was actually due to the switch over between euro and sterling. So there was actually growth. It was just when you changed it over into euro, it declined. So there's been overall steady growth in euro terms in the UK from 2017 up to 2020. There's recorded 18% growth since 2018, so up by nearly a fifth. And the major drivers there are online and home delivery. And I did hear a figure, I think £1 in every £7 spent on retail in the UK has been spent on an online environment. So it is definitely a growing opportunity, especially in highly urbanized areas. Now, the one thing worth pointing out about the UK market is that if you look at sales by category compared to Ireland, it's quite different in terms of their market share. The share in the Irish market for dairy was 23%, and it's 43% in the UK. There's also very little organic seafood on the UK market, just 1% versus 19% for the Irish market. So it's a slightly different market setup, just as I said, more dairy, and fruit and veg is a similar sort of proportion at 38% then. So in terms then of the organic sales at retail, there was a much stronger growth in organic sales at UK retail level. So up to the 52 weeks end, the end of October, sales were up by 5%, just over 5%, or worth an extra 59 million. As I said, there was similar to the Irish market. There's the number of packs is sold, but the volume per buyer has been a key driver. There's been a lot more produce, and you'll see bought per buyer, sorry, and then your volume per trip is also, and your frequency is increasing. Now it does show a decline in penetration and the number of buyers, but whenever you start dealing with smaller sort of sections like organic and indeed lamb and things, the calendar data becomes unreliable on some things. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. So in terms then of the UK's retail performance, it again has been quite different from what we've seen for the Irish market. In terms of total grocery, they grew by 5.2% versus just 3% for the conventional. You'll see the organic veg has been the strongest market growth there, almost 7.5%, and also then other fruit. Meat has actually shown very strong growth as well, up 6.5%. And then, as I said, once you move into poultry and fish, it's very small proportions. So then what are the growth expectations then for the UK market? Very similar to the Irish market in terms of annual growth rate, is expected to be in around 9%, up as far as 2025, up to 35 billion, or 3.5 billion, sorry, by 2025. As I mentioned, online and home delivery are going to be key drivers, and what they've called out is the categories that maybe currently aren't that mainstream in the UK, such as eggs, dairy, eggs, fruit and veg, are expected to drive the growth in that market. So now we'll take a look at a bit of research we commissioned, just looking at the 7 biggest markets for organic produce in the EU. So there's Germany, France, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, Italy, and Austria. So combined, they have a market value of over 35 billion for organic sales. You'll see there's been very strong growth since 2015. It's actually between 2015 and 2019 an increase by 56%. The sales by category is very, very similar to what we've recorded for the Irish market, with fruit and veg making up 42% and dairy 24%. So combined, they're making up 2/3 of sales. Very similar to what we've seen in the Irish market. So in terms then of market value, the largest market is Germany, and this was for the status for 2020, and it's grown by 40%, up as far as 12 million. Now, a separate report we've done actually valued it more at closer to 15 million. There's been exceptional growth there, as well as in other regions such as France and Italy, as well as grown very strong growth. And in Denmark, it's becoming increasingly popular. You'll see that the sales have increased by 83%. So we focus on Germany now. What has been their biggest driver behind their growth? They've seen their total sales is about 6% of the total food and drink market, and has grown by between 6 and 10% over the last 3 years. Now, organic products in the supermarkets have become more mainstream in Germany. You've got a lot of natural food stores make up 30% of sales, and then our supermarkets or your standard retailer making up about 57%. So just as these have grown, it's just made organic produce much more accessible and much more mainstream. And to back on that, then there's been obviously huge growth in organic sales. We recently have done a study into the opportunities in the German market, just looking at key opportunities and key sectors where there could be potential for growth, and that's been sort of complemented by a lead generation project that's currently underway to identify potential customers for Irish organic companies that are looking to export to the market. And that'll run along where Bord Bia are taking a stand at BioFac again in 2022, and we're taking 11 client companies with us. So hopefully that'll be key in driving growth to that market and identifying opportunities. So if we look then at the opportunities then in the German market in particular, you'll see that for all categories, that's the graph for the German markets just to the right of your screen there. There's continued growth expected in all categories in the German market. Now the growth as we move in is expected to continue, but just at slightly more modest levels than we've seen. So somewhere between 4, 5, and 3% then over the next number of years. As I've said, France and Germany are two of the biggest drivers behind organic demand for food in the EU. And while growth in their sectors is expected to grow, their organic production is not expected to grow by as much, which will give important countries such as Ireland, if we're looking at export products, opportunities in that market. I'll move on now to Irish consumer attitudes towards organic. This was a study that Bord Bia commissioned back in 2020. Are wishing to buy organic. So the main 36% of respondents said it was their main reason for buying organic food, and 73% then said that better for your health was that they've just identified as any reason they were asked to list them. So basically, overall, the two main reasons called out were better for your health and better for the environment. And then as you move down the cohort, then taste better, last longer, and there was a few that identified smaller categories that were not identified. So I suppose the one thing about consumer or organic products is that they tend to be at a slightly higher price point. So as part of this study, they looked at the willingness of a consumer to spend more for organic food. So if you actually move from right to left on your screen, you'll see that 71%, that's the two green bars at the top. So 71% of the population said that they'd be willing to pay 5% or more for organic produce. 10% premium over and above standard price, that dropped to 50%. And then as you went up to 15%, then that dropped to 37% of the study. And now the one thing worth highlighting here is that our younger categories who tend to eat more organic produce, as identified earlier, they indexed much higher than that. So you'll see there the 60% of people in the 25 to 34 age category said they would pay 10% more for food versus 50% of the total study. So another part of this study looked at the attitudes towards organic food, and they were asked, would you choose locally produced Irish food over organic food? So 2/3 of people said that they would prefer to buy locally produced food than organic. I suppose you have to take this within the context of the green image of Irish farming and our production, and I suppose it does create the thing that maybe organic on its own right is not enough, and that's something that we have maybe observed in the German market in particular as the organic market becomes more developed. So just on that note, I'll take a wee look at the German market. So as I said, there's been a 35% increase in consumer spend on organic products and retail in the organic market versus 2015. So if you look at these 4 products underneath, which are becoming increasingly mainstream, you've got your plant-based flaxseed and organic, a clean label product that's also organic, a locally produced superfood drink that's also organic, and then a health drink that also just happens to be organic. So then we looked at the top 10 reasons as well for purchasing organic products in Germany, and I suppose animal welfare was called out as the highest one, very quickly followed by food is produced as naturally as possible. As you see, then there's a series of things here, over 90% in terms of importance. So healthy diet, regional origin, less pesticides, fewer additives. So these are the main reasons that obviously the people are opting to buy organic produce in the German market. As I said, like organic is in its own right. The consumer is looking for something a bit more as well as that. So we're looking at organic meat accounts for about 2% of consumption in Germany, but it's shown actually 6-7% growth in the last couple of years. So you'll see there's Halsungsform, which is a welfare logo, and that just is there alongside organic. Then you've got organic dairy products that are growing faster than the total dairy category. You'll see the growth in value of organic milk products are growing by 20%. Conventional was 10%. And then your yellow line products that are cheeses and things are 20% growth versus 3.4%. And then you've also got a series of plant-based products. You've got your ambient, your chilled, and your frozen products that are all organic, and it just goes to show the breadth of the offering of organic in Germany. Just as an example. So where to from here from an Irish perspective? There are opportunities to grow the organic sector. People are increasingly looking for sustainable food solutions, and we're well positioned to meet demands around the healthier, the natural, and the better for the planet. So there's huge potential for growth there. There is also a plant-based trend. As I said, there's several products there identified in the German market that was for plant-based foods, driving that sort of natural image within the organic sector has. And obviously there'll be vegetables, fruit, and herbs and things going in through that. As I touched on, the demand or the growth in organic markets, particularly in Europe, will be faster than their domestic production will grow or forecast to grow. So this will create opportunities for organic companies to export. It's just about having the scale to meet the demands of the customers. And then finally, the prevalence of imports and fresh produce. We've seen that particularly in fresh produce and cereals, there's been a huge proportion of our product is currently being imported. So there is an opportunity to displace that with more domestic production. So the key challenge is then to be addressed. The coordination of supply is one issue, just to minimize leakage. It's something particularly in the meat sector. I think there's between 60 and 70% of lambs that are born in an organic farm are lost to the conventional sector. There's also a fair proportion of organic beef that is also lost. So so it's all about coordinating that supply and a bit of supply chain development just to get the producers and the processors lined up just in terms of supply. Now, scale and seasonality have been called out as some of the key issues by retailers in particular, just about stocking Irish produce. Obviously, you've got your fragmented supply base, and it makes it more difficult then to keep a product on shelf, even within the season that it's in season. And then, there is going to be times of the year where we can't grow or require or can't supply what's required. So there will have to be probably some import, but there is huge opportunity to displace at particular times of the year when we can grow it and supply it. And then the raw material availability, I don't know, Flahavan will be talking later on, but I suppose just one example that was called out was that we currently only produce enough oats to meet 50% of the cereal demand, and that may have changed from this report was commissioned back in 2020. And as George touched on, we do import an awful lot of animal feed as well. So there are opportunities there. So just to sum up, some of the details slide I suppose I've shared, and there is expected growth. As I said, the growth in the UK and the Irish market is expected to grow at about 9% between now and 2025, and the European market is set to grow somewhere between 3 and 4%, a bit more modest, but continue to grow. There is a very positive consumer attitude towards our organic produce, particularly the health and the better environment and things, and there is a growing demand for that product, as seen by the huge growth we've recorded between 2019 and 2020 in particular for organic produce. As I said, Irish consumers, 50% of them are willing to pay a modest premium for organic produce, which is encouraging. Though the one key thing moving forward, particularly in some of the sectors, is just coordinating that supply base and that supply chain development, just to maximise what we can out of the organic produce that we are creating. So that sort of brings an end to my presentation. So I'll just hand you back to Odile now.
Thank you, Seamus. Sorry, I had myself on mute there. So while James is setting up his presentation, do you want to share your presentation there, James?
Yep.
Just a quick question for you, Seamus, before we move on to the next one. you talked about the market in continental Europe. What would be the main barriers to Ireland supplying more organic product to that market?
One of the biggest issues would probably be scale. And we do have a very fragmented supply base. It's only 2% of our land area, so we don't really have the production in a lot of cases to meet those contractors. Some of those big contracts in particular. Now there is a growing market in Germany in particular, in your small organic type retail specific stores where there may be opportunities. And the study we're doing to sort of identify potential options, particularly in the German market, that lead generation, will explore opportunities for products and the type of market and opportunities that will be there over the next few years. And as I mentioned, we will be going to BioFac in Nuremberg in February with 11 plant companies. So hopefully there'll be plenty of interest drummed up at that.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Perfect. So I'll just introduce our next speaker, who's needs very little introduction, James Flahavan, and you're of that very famous family of the mill down in Kilmacthomas in County Waterford, and it's very much a family-run business. And just to remind our attendees tonight that there is a Q&A box, so if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please do put them in the Q&A function there. So I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Odile. So first of all, I'd just like to really thank George and Odile for inviting Flahavans along this evening to give a talk to yourselves. My name is James Flahavan, as Odile mentioned. So my day-to-day role is on the export sales side. So that's kind of primarily where I'd be focused. But I suppose I just wanted to give an update as to what we're doing on the organic, the organic side of our business in particular, and just kind of hone in on that for the audience tonight. So I suppose I'm going to just run through, tell people a bit about Flahavans, the kind of timeline that we've had around organics, go into the demand side on sales and that the consumer side, and then also onto the supply side, and then some more investments and some kind of more recent developments from our point of view. For people that don't know us, Flahavans, we're primarily a breakfast cereal manufacturing, specializing in oats, based in the southeast of Ireland in County Waterford. Just without further ado, I'll go into the timeline. So just a very short history about ourselves. So we started milling in 1785. So quite a long time ago now, and obviously back then most things would have been organic, if you go back to its roots. I suppose in the 1930s we moved as a business more significantly into the consumer or human food side of the business. Prior to that, it would have been a kind of a strong focus on kind of toll milling and things like that, for a lot of it going into animal feed side. In the 2000s, we introduced a range of organic specialist products, so organic bagged products you can see down on the bottom left-hand side. Then in the 2010s, we introduced a convenience range of the equivalent products. So sachets and pots were some developments in the organic side for us then. And then most recently, as of last summer, we developed an organic oat drink. So that was launched in August of 2020. So I suppose in terms of the demand side, just to give people an overview of our total business, this is the mix of conventional versus organic, and the split within our business. So we're not exclusively organic, so we do both. But we have seen huge growth in the last number of years on the organic side, compared to the conventional maybe, which had been slower growth overall. I suppose Seamus did show the slide there from the demand overall for organics in Ireland. and showing that 2020 was a year that was very strong growth, 18%. I suppose we would have seen that kind of across the board in Ireland in 2020 across all grocery. So our sales, both unconventional and organic, increased very significantly. I suppose just looking at this chart here, going from 2015 to 2020, the organic side of the business has grown by 80%. And if I was to go back a little bit further, back to 2010, organics made up about 17% of our output, compared to where it is now. It's about 34% of our output. So its share of our business has doubled in the 10 years since then. I suppose just on that organic side, where is the demand coming from? So we see it primarily from the export side is where our kind of real base demand is. If you look back to 2015, we were supplying, maybe 2016, we're supplying broadly the same amount of tonnage of finished product into the Irish market as we were into export markets. But I suppose the growth in the Irish domestic market for us has been a little bit slower. It's we already have a good level of kind of penetration for organics within the hot cereals category. So our kind of headroom for growth there was probably a little bit more limited compared to what the opportunity was for us on the export side. So I suppose if you look at the trend line between both of those, you can see, the majority of that growth has come on the export side. In so much now that we export 2/3 of our total organic output and 1/3 goes into the Irish market. Just moving on then to the supply side. That gives you I'm sorry, I'll just go back and reference on that export side. The majority of that is going into the UK. So while there is big opportunities, as Seamus outlined in continental Europe, where there's big markets for it, I suppose the majority of our growth has come on the UK side. So that's kind of where that is coming from. Just on the supply side, and again referencing back to Seamus's presentation, showing that we were only meeting about 50% of the organic supply side. Very, very happy to report that this year is the first year that we aren't anticipating that we'll have to import any organic oats as part of our requirements. So looking back at 2015, we would have imported roughly about half of our requirements. So we would have been buying up pretty much all of the output of the Irish market, and then that's not being enough for us on the demand side. So we have to go to the UK to source that gap there in the gold color. The Irish market output has fluctuated across the last couple of years, but we did make a concerted effort back in 2017, 2018 to really get behind and really to be able to secure 100% of our supply on the island of Ireland. And I suppose given the 3-year conversion process, and given the scheme, the various openings and that, I suppose it has been a slow process, but we did see the fruits of it starting to bear fruit in 2019 and again in 2020, but it really hit home in harvest 2021. We had a 78% in the amount coming from the Irish growers, which was fantastic to see. We were delighted that we had that level of growth. So we're able to say now that the organic oats were 100% self-sufficient. So as well as being local, they're also organic too. So just in terms of just things that we're doing ourselves, looking at that overall demand side and supply side, we needed to increase our overall capacity. So as of this summer, we've added a new grain storage bin to go in line with our other organic bins. That has a capacity for an extra 1,500 tons, and we're looking to the future as well to see, do we need additional storage for harvest 22 and 23 onwards. In terms of harvest 21, yeah, it was really good on all three counts from a grower's point of view. You know, they would have received, you know, a good price, and then the quality of the grain was good, and the yield was also really good. So they really got kind of all three together in the 1 year. So I suppose, and conventional had the same. You know, it was a really good year from a harvest point of view. Hopefully next year 2022 will match it. But I suppose you never know with the kind of a weather subjective crop like oats. Just in terms of, and might be of interest to this audience, just some developments in terms of cereals. I suppose one of the things that we're looking at is in relation to mycotoxins, and just to make people aware of it. It is something that's out there in terms of the EU. There's mycotoxins called T2 and HT2, which there may be some limits imposed for oats, for the raw oats, the grain as it comes in from the field, and also for the consumer product. So it's something that we're kind of watching out for. But I suppose from our point of view, you know, what limited kind of evidence is there of kind of those mycotoxins and their impacts on humans, I suppose it shouldn't be lost for the overall benefits that are proven, you know, in relation to oats, in relation to kind of the beta glucans being there to you know, proven to lower blood cholesterol and improving heart health as well. So I suppose that is something that we're keeping a very close eye on. You know, the mycotoxins tend to develop, they're more prevalent in Irish and UK grains than any other grains in Europe. So it is something that we're just monitoring on our own side as well. So I suppose, yeah, that's, you know, a very quick whistle stop tour about our organic business. So again, I'll say thanks to Odile and to George for inviting me along, and the privilege of speaking to everyone tonight. And I think we're going to take questions at the end.
Yep, that's great. Thanks very much, James. So your screen's gone down there. Okay, perfect. So I'll introduce our next speaker tonight is John Purcell from Good Herdsmen, and people will know Good Herdsmen, particularly from the organic beef side of things. So John, you're there. Yeah, there you are. You could give us an overview of Good Herdsmen and the organic market as you see it.
Thanks, Odile. Thank you for your introduction. Again, I'm very privileged to be asked to speak with you this evening. I'm not as slick now as James was in his slides and his presentation, but I'm going to go au naturel and just provide you with information verbally with no slides, but I think the content should be sufficient enough. Good Herdsmen is an exclusive organic beef company. It was established by a German visionary, three German families that came to Ireland back in the middle 70s, and they set up a house and farm just outside Clare, Ballybrado. A lot of people might have heard of it. And with their vision, they started a company called Good Herdsmen in 1989, and it was set up originally as a marketing platform for new emerging Irish organic farmers who are coming into the scene. At that stage, there was no accreditation body, so they, in their wisdom again, decided to get involved and say, with other people, other interested parties, they set up IOFCA, and so they had their supply and they had their certification. So that was quite visionary, and of those. And I must say, just on a sad note, one of those visionaries, Richard Owler, who again lived in Clare all his life, just passed away there last week from a COVID-related illness. So just our thoughts with his family, and may he rest in peace. The company was originally set up basically, as I said, to provide a marketing platform, mainly for lambs at the time. And Joseph Finke recalls to me the times that he used to deliver the first organic lambs to Quinsworth that time in Dublin in the boot of the car, 4 or 5 lambs at a time. And that's how it started. That humble, it was very humble beginnings. the organic cattle started to appear in the scene in the mid-90s, and I became a shareholder, 50% shareholder in the business in late 1999. And with my own background in beef and live shipping, my own family, my focus was on beef and not on lamb at the time. The quality of the organic cattle back in those early years, I have to say, was very, very poor. I'm not against traditional breeds. I like traditional breeds, but that's all was available for the organic beef offering at the time, Dexters and Kerrys. And unfortunately, retailers were not buying weren't buying into this. So I thankfully, a lot of new farmers started to emerge into the schemes, and they brought with them a lot of new genetics and a better quality beef animal into the system, and that obviously helped our business, and particularly our marketing abroad. In 2004, we were totally dependent on outside contractors for all our deboning, our slaughtering, deboning, and retail packing. So in 2004, we decided to build our own factory here in Clare, just for retail packing and distribution. And so we were Ireland's first organic exclusive meat factory, and today I think we can still make that claim. We could only grow our business as fast as organic farmers and their cattle started to come into the system. Again, we started off slaughtering 5 cattle per week when I joined, and now still maybe a small figure to some people, but it's 150 cattle per week we're slaughtering. So we've seen growth. Okay, it's taken 20 years, but it's been tangible growth, and we've found markets for the beef as it's presented to us. On the lamb side, I know through our links with Irish Country Meats, they're slaughtering about 18,000 organic lambs per year. They have a nice range of customers, both in Ireland, the UK, France, and and Belgium. And that's quite a substantial amount of lambs they're slaughtering. The lamb price at the moment is quite strong, as everybody knows, mainly due to the shortage of conventional lamb in the system. I think New Zealand haven't come with their lamb as they normally would. I think they have transport issues, and also the big demand from China. UK are back, I think, back about 1 million lambs per year on their production, so it's putting a lot of pressure on the lamb. It's nice to see organic farmers getting a good price for their lambs. I think they're getting about €8 a kilo. I just don't know if that's sustainable. Consumers will back away if prices get too strong. Manufacturers will back away. So I'm hoping that will just level down and quieten down a little bit, because it's just not sustainable, the current prices, I believe in it. As I say, our new factory in Clare here mainly catered for storage, distribution, and retail packing. And we're currently employing 23 people in the factory. But even with our own packing plant, we're very vulnerable in the marketplace in relation to our slaughtering and deboning. We're depending on other factories to slaughter and debone for us. So in 2010, our chairman, Joseph Finke, our 50% shareholder, decided he would like to retire from the business. And at that stage, I felt it's necessary as a strategic move to bolt our business, which was a marketing business, onto a slaughter plant. So I invited ABP to come on board, and they duly obliged. I have to say, though, we were working with ABP through 3 or 4 years prior to that, so I was aware of them. I liked what they were doing. I liked the modern facilities that they provided, and our customers need that. When they come to Ireland, they like to visit the farms, obviously, but the factories are key for them from a credential point of view, BRC approval, and all the different accreditations that customers expect from factories. ABP are able to offer that. Now, with that alliance, Good Herdsmen, we were in a much better and stronger position to offer farmers long-term contracts and long-term pricing. And we had access to all the ABP factories, but we decided to focus our slaughtering and deboning in 2 locations, one in Clare and one in Clones, County Monaghan. That gave us a good locations to service the farmers in the Northeast and Midlands, and then down in Clare, obviously the Munster and Leinster regions. Also, by having ABP on board, we were able to access it's called Ultra Tender. It's a hip hanging technology. Traditionally, you'd see in butcher shops beef hung from the shin. We hang our beef from the hip, and this produces a much better quality, eating quality in our steak meat, particularly our steak meat. So we'd access that technology through the relationship. We also had to up our game in our farms. Currently, we are organically farming about 1,100 acres. That's with our own lands and in partnership with several other farmers. So with our business, supermarkets particularly wanted 52-week supply. We were not able to guarantee that. A lot of organic farmers like to sell their beef off the land, close up shop for the winter and get back into business then in the spring. That model didn't really suit our business, so we had to invest heavily in our wintering facilities. So now we're able to supply a lot of our own beef during the winter months, along with a lot of more organic farmers that are thankfully finishing cattle during the winter period. We also invested quite substantially in our farms from a sustainable and biodiversity reason. A lot of our farms in Ireland are really showcases for our customers. As I said, the customers, they like to come to the factories to see where we're slaughtering to make sure it's all done properly, but they like our sustainable story on our farms. So we've introduced a lot of wetlands into the farm. We've sown over 12,000 trees there in the last 2 years, and we're trying to have a carbon neutral beef farm by 2025. And we're measuring our carbon footprint on a weekly or a monthly basis. And I can tell you we're very close to reaching that figure. So it's something that's going to happen anyway. With both conventional and organic farms, we'll have to address our biodiversity, our carbon footprint. And I think what we're doing in the farm, we're leading that program. We've also made a big investments in our machinery. With our customer base in Germany and France particularly, we deal a lot with baby food companies as a beef ingredient for the baby food jars. And with that, we had to purchase a very, very expensive mince filtering processing machinery that we could basically filter our mince of any bone chips or heavy membranes. And that beef, we sell about 450 tons of that beef onto the European market every year. And the reason we got the business, besides the investment that we made in the machinery, is because of the quality of our beef. When we earmarked a baby food company in Germany there many years ago, we sent over samples to them of our beef. And they rang us maybe a week later and they said, listen, could you send some more samples? Something must have happened, the first ones in our testing laboratories. They tested the second batch of samples, and they came back to us and said they've never seen samples of meat like it before. We had no heavy metals in our meat. We had no heavy residues of any pesticides or herbicides sprayed on land that maybe might have been conventional back in the day, now it's organic. There was no residues of any pesticides in the soils. They were amazed. They're absolutely amazed. And because of the strength of that, we were able to supply them with our beef. But also that unique thing that we have in Ireland with our soils, we have grass. That's so unique. It's a really unique selling point that we have, and something maybe we're not using strong enough. Our markets are broken down roughly as follows. Maybe 40% of our produce we retail pack for the Irish market. 27% of our produce goes to Germany, 15% to the UK. And as Seamus outlined, the online business is quite strong. That's where we are positioned in the UK. We're working with a company called Ocado. Many people might know them. And that's a market we would like to grow, because that's where the money is, guys. That's where they're paying most for organic beef. If we could get more than a bigger share of 15% into the UK market, we could offer a better premium back to the organic farmer. So France 6%, France and Italy 6%, 4% in the rest of Europe, and mainly into Spain and to Denmark. We retail pack approximately 35% of our production into retail packs like this. And a further 22% of our raw material goes into that filtered mince production that I mentioned there, into mainly Germany and France. The balance of our product then goes in backpack format then to other manufacturers around Europe, particularly in the UK and in Germany. Again, as Seamus outlined, 2020 was an exceptional year for sales with a big bounce on the back of the pandemic. People did start to cook at home and were interested in buying a more luxurious product. So we've seen sales really rise, 24, 20, even up to 30%. I have to say it has come back a little bit, maybe to 12%, but that's still 12% more than it was in 2019. The new funding that's been announced, 256 million, has been announced by the government the development of the Irish organic sector. It's very, very welcome news. Finally, we can basically plan for the future. This has been spoken about for years and years, that we're going to grow the organic market or organic land base by 7%. I think it was said by Trevor Sargent back in the day. And it's happening. There's money behind it to support it, and that's very, very welcome. Up to date, our current productions, 150 cattle a week, guys, is very, very small. So with that small volume of meat, we could not knock on doors of the big European supermarkets. We just hadn't enough product for them. So with the announcement of these new schemes, which I think are open next January, I'm told 6,000 farmers will be allowed into these schemes, and that's very, very encouraging. I believe we will have markets for this beef, because if we know in January, February next year how many farmers are coming into the scheme for that year, we have 2 years to plan the marketing of that beef, because it's going to take 2 years for those farmers to convert, for the animals to be organic at the end of it. And so it's given us plenty of heads up, if you like, to access new markets. And again, with the ABP Alliance, we were able to, we have better routes to market. They're dealing with the bigger players in Europe, and we just need to go in behind them with our organic offering. So I have no fear of these new volumes hitting the market. I believe we will be able to market them. The image we have abroad, in the fairness of Bord Bia, have been doing a fantastic job promoting Irish beef, particularly in Germany, in Sweden, and the Netherlands. We have a good image out there, and I just don't think we're using it enough. Kerrygold are using it to all its advantages, and I think maybe we should do something similar. So I think with this new beef that we hope will come on the market, we will use our USPs a little more effectively, and I think we'll get a lot of credit. So again, I just say no fear, don't have any fear to farmers. I know there's a lot of press there, a lot of spokesmen for different bodies have been speaking about the lack of markets. I can't see that. We have markets for our current supply. We will have markets for anything that does come down the line. So it's very, very positive news. It's all upbeat, and as Seamus pointed out there, the growth is out there. We need to maybe put our hand to the wheel and just realize what we have. We have a fantastic product. It can be marketed very, very effectively. So I look forward to the future. That's me, Odile. That's me done.
Great. Thank you, John. Very positive outlook on the future. I know we said we'd take the questions at the end, but there's one here that's more specific to you, John. What is the sales value of the organic fifth quarter?
Oh my God. Yeah. There you go now. There you go. Unfortunately, Odile, we say the hide, for instance, which would be the biggest part of the fifth quarter, difficult to sell. Actually, I don't have any market that we could sell that hide into, organic market. So unfortunately, the hide is the biggest part of the fifth quarter, goes conventionally. The rest of the liver, the heart, we do get it sold organically, not always. It's a bit more difficult. The French seem to be the bigger buyers of that, and they have a huge organic domestic kill of their own. You must remember, like, there are 7.8 million organic cattle in Europe. We have only 86,000 cattle. So we're less than 1% of the, sorry, not 86,000, 76,000. So we have only 1% of the organic cattle available in Europe. So we're very, very small players, you know. So the French, again, would be the home for most of the offal, and they have they have their own domestic supply. So a lot of our offal is sold conventionally, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, so it's quite limited then. Okay, perfect. Great. Well, I'm sure we'll be back to more questions at the end, but for now, I'm going to move on to our last but not least, our final speaker, Vincent Griffith from Aurivo Co-op. And Vincent is the Farm Profitability Program Manager with Aurivo. So I'll hand it over to you, Vincent.
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself there, Odile. No, thanks very much for the opportunity, for the ASA, from Odile and George, for the opportunity to speak to you. So, as Odile said, my name is Vincent Griffith. I manage the Farm Profitability Program for Aurivo Co-op. So I'm just on the farmer-facing side of the co-op. I deal with all our milk suppliers, I suppose, and all the technical issues that are facing our farms. But tonight I'm just going to go through the organic side of our business and what we do in Aurivo Co-op in terms of organics. Sorry. So Aurivo Co-op, for anyone that doesn't know, I know there'll be people from around the country. We're obviously a farmer-owned co-op. We're based in the northwest. Our head office is in Sligo. So we would have previously been Connagold, and then Connagold would have bought the milk business out of Donegal Creameries. So that created the formation of Aurivo Co-op, which was happened in 2013. So at the moment, we have 1,000 milk suppliers supplying milk to the co-op. 90% of those are in the Republic of Ireland and 10% are in Northern Ireland. We have a very large milk supply base. So we collect milk down as far as South Galway, around Gort and Ballinasloe, and all the way up to the Inishowen Peninsula, up around Moville and areas like that. So we cover that area, and we go over as far as Moat and Westmeath. So we cover a big area. We're obviously not the only co-op that collect milk in that area, but it's a very large supply base. And it's fair to say we don't have the same density of dairy farms that would be in the rest of the country in areas like Tipperary or Cork. And we also have 10% of our milk is produced by dairy farmers in Northern Ireland, and they're spread throughout the country, probably a bigger density along the Tyrone-Donegal border around Strabane and Castledorg. We have 2 processing sites in Balladurnian, County Roscommon, where the milk is dried into powders and also churned into butter, and we have our liquid milk packing plant in Killigordon in County Donegal, and that's where our organic milk goes. I'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. I suppose, like everyone else in the dairy industry, we've had huge expansion in milk production over the last number of years. And it looks like, I suppose, there's going to be continued growth in milk volumes, maybe through, maybe not through more cows, but maybe more through on-farm efficiencies, better cows, mature herds. So with that, there's been a huge amount of investment in the co-op to process all this extra milk. There's been a lot of investment in Killigordon to make it more efficient in terms of a liquid milk packing plant. And then also in our site in Balladurnian, there's a new dryer was erected a couple of years ago to give us more capacity, particularly around peak with our seasonal calving pattern. And there's continued plans for development so we can process all the milk that's coming from our milk suppliers. I suppose that's just maybe an overrun of the general business. The co-op also has an agri-business and a marts division as well as part of that. And our agri-business does supply animal feeds into the organic market. Our organic business, it's a liquid milk business. We don't, I think George might have alluded to it earlier. We don't process it into anything else. We don't make butter from it or dry it into powders. It's purely a liquid milk business. We have 10 suppliers at the moment, 10 liquid milk suppliers, and it's about 1% of our total milk process. So the crop would process over 500 million litres of milk, and organic milk would be less than 5 million litres processed. The total amount of organic milk, I suppose, supplied to the co-op is relatively static at the moment. There's been some suppliers have exited or gone back into conventional production, and we've taken on some new entrants, and some of our existing farmers have converted to organic as well. The business is entirely based in the Republic. All those 10 milk suppliers are in the Republic, and as I said earlier, the milk goes to the plant in Killigordon to be packed. I suppose obvious thing to say, but obviously separation of the milk is very important. The milk is processed first in the plant in Killigordon in the morning, so obviously there's no crossover between that and conventional milk. A separate lorry collects the milk off farm, and the milk is collected at night to make sure it's in the plant in the morning to be processed. The milk is then packed under the Organic for Us brand, and it's sold there as whole milk or low fat milk. And we also pack some private label for some of the retailers as well. I suppose in terms of supplying organic milk to the co-op, it's not paid on a typical A plus B minus C system that our conventional spring calving system farmers will be paid on. So it's a different payment structure, more typical of how our liquid milk business is paid for. You have to supply milk all year round, because I think it was alluded to by maybe John, like the demand for organic products is the same every year. So you must have product available to go on to retail shelves, and it must be also a flat supply curve. We don't want a situation where farmers are supplying a little bit of milk over the winter and then supply a lot of milk in the main summer period, because again, we need a fairly steady supply of milk again to meet our contracts with the retailers. In terms of milk quality standards, they're very similar to what we'd be testing for on conventional farms. Farms are tested for thermoduric bacteria, stomatic cell count, TBC, obviously routine tests for antibiotics, and percentage water in the milk is important. If you go above certain levels, there's fines. If you're below that, you're paid on the standard price. I suppose obviously all our farms are accredited, so the premium that's paid for organic milk is dependent on having your organic certification from the Irish Organic Association. That's an independent certification, but the co-op have nothing to do with that. But obviously if you lose your accreditation, you're back on conventional price at that stage as a dairy farmer. As well as that, all our organic suppliers, as well as our conventional milk suppliers, must be part of the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme. Very important for a number of reasons. Customers are asking about, I suppose, our green credentials, and I suppose it's been mentioned maybe a bit earlier in terms of carbon footprint. It's where all our milk suppliers get their carbon footprint for their farm generated, and it's also, I suppose, it makes farmers aware of where they can reduce their carbon footprint, which is probably the big challenge for the dairy industry going forward, is to reduce our environmental impact. So again, that's a prerequisite of supplying to the co-op. You must be part of STAS. There is obviously a 2-year for any farmer that would change into organics. There's a 2-year changeover period from conventional to organic. During that period, you are still only paid the conventional price. You don't get paid the organic price, as I said, till you've got your organic certification. We have had some new entrants previously who are organic beef and sheep farmers, and they've been accredited straight away, so they would have got their organic payment straight away. So I suppose in terms of the future, like obviously Aurivo are very committed to our organic business. It's a small percentage of our total milk, but it's still an important part of our product mix, especially going into retail. So it's something we're very committed to, and obviously, like for our farm families that are producing organic milk, it's obviously clearly very important to them. In terms of increasing the number of milk suppliers in the future, it'll obviously depend on getting increasing markets for organic milk. There is a very significant premium paid for organic milk, and if you didn't have markets to that, you wouldn't be able to justify it as a business paying that higher price if it was just being sold as conventional liquid milk. So increasing markets are very important. And to be fair, again, because of our big geography and that we cover a huge amount of area, logistically, where farms are located does matter. If farms are 50, 60 miles away from our nearest organic supplier, we wouldn't be in a position to collect them, because at the moment, only one lorry collects all the milk from all the organic farms, and it's done in a single milk run. So again, just due to the logistical issue, it isn't where their geography is does matter a lot in terms of being able to take them on as organic suppliers. So if there is people interested in terms of becoming an organic supplier with the co-op, we would say to come and talk to us first before if you're interested in coming to Aurivo. Obviously there's other milk processors that you can go to with organic milk, but if you're in our area and you are interested in coming, we would say come and talk to us first before you might do anything, just to make sure that we'd be in a position to take your milk. So that's a very quick run through of our organic business. If there's any questions or anything, I'll take them now.
Great, thanks, Vincent. We've one question straight up for you anyway. Has Aurivo any plans to get into the organic powder or butter market?
Not at the moment. Just because logistically, like, we're not ruled out in the future, but just not at the moment. There's no plans. I think John might have mentioned it as well. Like, we're processing over 550 million litres to dedicate a Pacific dryer, or in terms of milk segregation, particularly during peak months where there's an awful lot of milk going through plants. You just have to justify that at the moment for the scale of the business.
Okay. So I'm just going to put up, Barbara has a poll for just to get an idea, a gauged idea from the audience of where people are at on organics at the moment. And while she's doing that, is that working? Oh yeah, there you go, should be up. And if anybody has any questions, please do put them into the Q&A function. Okay, so the first question, and I think we need to put this to all of the speakers really. What are some of the key policy developments which could best support the Irish organic market? It's a big question, but I'll go to James first.
Sorry. Thanks, Odile. I suppose there are, from what I can see, there's kind of been a bit of a freeing up there in the last, 2 to 3 years of funds to come towards the organic sector, which has been a positive. I suppose, yeah, if you look at the EU targets, as a whole, to get to 25% of land to be farmed in organic, we're a long way off that. I think we're at about only 2% or something at the moment. So that there's a huge gap between where we want to be as an EU member, and with the Irish component of that. So I suppose there has been a bit of movement in the last number of years, which has been great to see, and that's helped a number of our suppliers come on to the organic scheme, because that was one of the things that people were, we were being told was preventing people from joining, was the fact that the scheme wasn't open to new entrants. So some of the barriers that had been there for people that wanted to supply us have been removed now at this stage.
Okay. And I'll go to you next, John. You're very positive about the recent changes, but what are the policy developments that would better support the Irish organic market from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say that very welcome news about the 256 million. But on top of that, I think it's only recently the policy has been to allow farmers avail of the eco schemes that are out there as well. Up to now, farmers could go organic but not avail of the eco schemes. And that was very unfair. I think Brussels looked at it as double funding, but I think that's cleared up now, and farmers can avail of that. And that has to be very welcome news, because I don't think they've changed, if any. I think the dairy maybe they have, but on the grass-based systems, they haven't changed the hectare payment. But now, without changing that, allowing farmers into the scheme has really upped their chances of increasing their funding, total funding. So that policy has been very welcome, Odile.
Okay, yeah. And Vincent? You're on mute there.
Yeah, I'd say it's similar to the sports, particularly during that conversion phase. It can be quite a high cost when you're still on conventional prices, and you may have you've kind of incurred a lot of the cost of changing over your production system. So probably supports during that initial conversion phase are very important.
And Seamus, from your perspective on the policy supports, you did talk a lot about the fresh fruit and veg and the organic market that we're importing a lot in that area. Is there more supports that can be put in to help on that side?
Any policy supports that can be put in place sort of to look at our scale of production and our managing our supply base, to maximize, to keep everything in the system, basically. That's been the biggest issue, like scale and year-round supply has been the biggest issue in identifying potential customers for Irish produce on the domestic market and the export markets. So look, any policy changes that would support increased production, look at displacing the need for imports, and address that seasonality issue, would be very useful.
Yeah, so more solid all-round supply.
Yeah.
Question then, this is for you, Vincent. What is the premium being paid for organic milk?
Roughly about 15 cents above average. I can't comment on some co-ops will pay a bonus over the winter. We kind of pay a flat price through the year, so it'll roughly be about 15 cents above conventional price.
Okay. We have another question here to all the presenters on your view why organic products aren't more prominently displayed in supermarkets in Ireland. If you travel to other countries in the EU, it is evident that sections of shops are dedicated to selling organic produce separately or highlighting it to the consumer as they enter the supermarket. Is there an opportunity for them to play a more prominent role in trying to push organic produce on our supermarket shelves to consumers? So anyone who'd like to go first? I'll bring to you first, Seamus, maybe.
I suppose if you go to some of those key European markets in particular, organic is much more mainstream. Like you're talking maybe 10-11% of the retail sales are classed as organic. There also is, as I touched on in my presentation, there is a preference for locally produced produce as well, not just organic. So there is a preference there, and John touched on it in his as well. There is a preference for local as well. So I suppose the biggest issue in us then, getting access to those markets is just our scale and our seasonality in a lot of cases. So it's just trying to ramp that up as much as we can. Just in terms then of the domestic sector, like there is some support or some visibility for organics. If you look at Dunn's and Tesco, both have organic ranges, labeled for the meat enemies label with that green label. And as for Bord Bia, we're actually working with a few of the retailers at the minute to see how we can help them with like brand development and supporting organic produce at point of sale. As I said, there is issues there in seasonality, and then we need to be seen to be promoting Irish organic produce, so it can't be just generic promote organic either. It needs to be something specific to each category that calls out the Irish organic, and then that needs to fit in with the seasonality of supply as well.
Yeah, we're seeing, I suppose, organic specific retailers emerging in Europe as well, I suppose, which is a change to the market. James, have you anything to add on the prominence of organic in the supermarkets?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, to add to what Seamus has said, yeah, it is very evident when you go to somewhere like Germany and you see how prevalent the products are there and the breadth of range as well. And yeah, in terms of the overall kind of route to market, you do have those dedicated organic retailers. So you have chains of organic retailers which have, you can do a full shop in them, compared to in Ireland, where it's kind of, a handful of products. Well, there are products within each category, but probably not to the same level where you could do a full shop with exclusively on organics. So I suppose, yeah, it's kind of a tough one to balance. Our specific products are merchandised in most retailers. Our organic products are merchandised beside the conventional equivalents, which for us is, we're kind of happy enough with that. It seems to work for us and our consumers. I don't know any retailers that gather all of their kind of ambient organic products together. I know some retailers do around fresh produce, but I would be interested to see, is there merit in looking at kind of organic specific sections on the ambient side.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, like what James said, the different supermarkets have taken different approaches. Some have identified just organic shelves with their, say, organic meat in our case, and some have just integrated it through their conventional range. And both models actually work, so it's hard to condemn one against the other. But I have to say, with our fresh meat, we say mince would be our biggest line. We have a 7-day shelf life on it. All the retailers, including the discounters, have either 1 or 7 SKUs of organic beef at the moment. But their wastage on organic is a lot higher than their conventional waste. In the organic, it could be up to 6%. In conventional, I think it's down to 1 and 2s. So supermarkets are just a little reluctant to fill the shelves on a daily basis. But I can tell you one thing, the Irish retailers are doing a heck of a good job from a very, very low base. As I mentioned, like the discounters and the main retailers have all organic beef SKUs and lamb SKUs at the moment as we speak. So I think hats off to the Irish retailers. They've caught up, not with the rest of Europe, but they've caught up with definitely the UK anyway. Definitely have.
Okay. Sorry, now, Vincent, I'm going to skip you because we've got quite a few questions in here. So the first one is, can you confirm the options for organic certification? I believe there's more than one. Well, I can take that one. There are 3 organic certification bodies in Ireland. You have the Irish Organic Association, the Organic Trust, and there is also Global Trust, which specifically focuses on aquaculture. So for farm producers, you've got 2. You've got IOA and you've got OT. Another question here. Staff is a massive issue in the horticultural sector at the minute. Within organics, this gives rise to even more labour needed. How do we attract a skilled workforce to allow us to expand? Anyone like to take that one? It's more related to horticulture, but
well, Odile, I just mentioned we are so dependent on non-nationals in our business coming here. We have a COVID outbreak at the moment in the factory, and it's devastating our production. But we'll be okay. But I just realized how dependent we are on them, you know. And my hat's off to those guys and girls we have here. The wheels would not turn unless we had our good friends from Poland, from Latvia, from Romania. We cannot get any Irish people to work as general operatives anymore. It's not a criticism; it's just the way things are gone. I just like to say thanks to our European friends. So.
And it's similar with the horticulture sector, I suppose, to the beef factories. I go, how do you attract more people to come, John, to work here?
Well, I always I think we have to go back to the Arthur Guinness days. I mean, you see what Arthur Guinness did back in the 1700s, 1800s. I mean, they built homes, hospitals, schools for their employees. You know, I think we need to maybe go back to that department, because we expect these guys to come in from wherever, Poland, Latvia, and expect them to find their own accommodation and set up their own bank account. And it's I don't think we're providing enough support for them when they come to Ireland. I think we could be addressing that a lot better, because now we're very dependent on them, and I think it's might be an issue coming down the road. You know? So yeah, so look after them a lot better. I think their healthcare as well as they're really on their own when they come here. You know, little or no support. I'm disappointed about that.
Yeah. James, anything to add on that on your side?
I suppose, you know, in terms of our suppliers, we're, you know, it's primarily kind of family farms are kind of our supply base. I suppose one of the big things on the horizon from a skills point of view, there's a degree program specializing in organics and organic farming, and then there's a master's degree in organic farming and biological farming that are going to be coming online. So the master's program is going to be in WIT, and then the undergraduate degree, I think, is in Carlow Institute of Technology, the Wexford campus there. So I think those have been kind of long in demand, you know, in terms of third level specializing in organics in Ireland, and it's great to see those when they come on stream. I think from autumn 2022 onwards, I believe is when they're both due to come online.
Okay, so that education piece is important there. I have two questions now for Bord Bia. Seamus, does Bord Bia have any immediate plans to run Irish TV promos for homegrown organic produce like they do for conventional agri? And the other question is, does Seamus think there could be a market for organic infant formula and organic butter in the European market that organic Irish dairy farmers could target?
And with regards to the TV, at the minute, like, advertising on TV is very expensive. It's the long and short of it, and it's like organic produce is about 2.5% of our total food production at the minute. So like Bord Bia have committed $1 million a year to promoting organic food, but the TV just doesn't maybe see the return that you would when you're looking at that. Now, we are committed to increase that spend just in line with production of as production grows, but I think there's more to be gained from other channels of promotion than TV at the minute. But that could change in the future as organic production grows.
Okay, and what's your view on organic infant formula and more areas, I suppose, organic dairy farmers can target?
To be honest, there are customers there, but maybe Vincent would be better placed to answer than me as a co-op. You know, I suppose it's the scale of production that we would have, and the size of the export pot that we have. Could we provide enough basically to supply them into? Certainly there's opportunities, but are we big enough to fulfill that opportunity?
Yeah, no, just to add to Seamus, I think the issue at the minute is scale, and there's probably a processing challenge. Look, we've gone through a period of enormous growth in the dairy industry, and in terms of being able to process that milk or dedicate processes and acids and enough milk to come off farms for it to be scalable, I think is a problem at the moment. That could change in the future, but I'd say at the minute that's the biggest challenge to it.
Okay. We've got a lot of questions here. I don't think I'm going to get through them all, but we have one here. Could the panel comment in general on growth potential for organic animal feeds given the logistic issues from UK imports? And so that affects particularly the dairy and beef producers. Vincent, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, like, we do import a lot of animal feeds, full stop, into Ireland, like both in conventional and organic systems. On the tillage side, I'm not sure have we the capability of producing particularly some of the proteins like soya or maize organically. Like, I think that might be not possible at the moment. That's the biggest issue. Definitely the cereals might be possible at the moment, but as it grows, like we're never going to be self-sufficient in animal feed, I think, realistically, with the size of the animal industry in Ireland, like, you know. So I'm sure there's potential for it to grow, but I'm sure we'll always have to import some amount of it.
John, before I come to you on that, we have another question here regarding the organic lamb as well. Saying that most of our organic lamb is produced down the west coast, but our only processor is located in Wexford. Would you see any solution to that issue?
Yeah, can I just go back to just your previous question?
Yeah.
Just a short thing, and I'm not trying to contradict Vincent, but like that back 5-6 years ago, we were buying in some grains and that from Irish producers, but we decided then to look at growing our own combi crop, basically peas, oats, barley, and we're 5 years into it now, and it's been a very successful program. So we have the capability in Ireland of growing our own produce, and that's the way organic farms should be: a closed farm gate, nothing brought in, everything sent out. We should be growing our own cereal, and we're able to do it. I've done it myself. I'm not the best farmer in the world, but we have done it. We've achieved it. We have, we're changing the varieties every year. We're growing with a rye this year now, just as a break crop. But Irish farmers can grow very successfully combi crops, full of protein, full of energy, and then you have the red clover silage then for your protein. So we can do it. We don't need to import a ton of meal in this. And particularly, our herd is so small, you know.
Yeah.
It's so small. So tillage farmers should be linking up with beef farmers and growing combi crops if they haven't the land to grow it themselves. But there's loads of potential here to produce our own. Anyway, the lamb. Yeah, I see Irish Country Meat seem to be the only show in town on the lamb side of things. But I know Navan now have got their license recently to kill lambs. I think they've actually started there only a few weeks ago. So at League, Keepback at League, I know kill lambs back in the day. They've stopped, don't know why. Obviously, the market wasn't there for them. But other than that, Odile, I think by having Wexford and Meath represented in the lamb sector, you know, that's quite good coverage, yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly Leinster, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, the West probably is not serviced as it should be. Correct. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Seamus, you want to come in there?
Yeah, just add in that Keepback Athletic are recently signed up for organic again, so they're currently killing organic lambs.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the question here that would work for all of you really. How can we best approach this disconnect between different Irish bodies who say there's no market for organics when the data is indicating otherwise? How do we approach this messaging so as not to confuse Irish farmers who are interested in converting but cautious? Seamus, I'll come to you first on that one.
Yeah, brother. As we've sort of seen from everyone sort of talk today, like there are opportunities for organic produce. Like they're forecasting 9% growth in the domestic market, and then a 4% growth in the EU, which would be our main sort of target. I suppose the main hindrance to promoting organics at the minute has been the supply and demand, and just the scale of production, and actually having product there year round that can meet the needs. Because when you go to these retailers, they're looking for either year round supply or 26-week supply, and that is difficult. And then from a Bord Bia perspective, we need to promote Irish product, and then it's just the availability, especially in some of the sectors where there's a lot of imported product. I know you could argue that a rising tide raises all boats, promoting the sector, but we're very specifically have to promote Irish products, and that creates a challenge, particularly at certain times of the year.
Okay, John.
Oh yeah, a bridle comes to mind for some of these guys, because I've seen some of the editorials that they spit out on the negativity of organic and there's no market and so on. I mean, Seamus has proved there is a market, and I can tell you there isn't. James will tell you the same, and Vincent. I mean, not to mention the medium that these guys use, but the editors of these mediums that the news is fed through, they have a responsibility as well, you know, to check the content of what these guys say, you know, and or they should run it across somebody in the know is this correct? Is this a correct statement or not? But there's two individuals particularly that are I'm not going to mention the names obviously tonight, but they have a responsibility to the sector, and they're letting the sector down. And the two people that are throwing out this information are actually organic farmers themselves. So it's very disappointing, so disappointing. But there has to be some kind of a check, a control on to check this information, is it correct or not. And I'll mention Agriland as a vehicle that a lot of people use. And Agriland, a fantastic source of material, but they should just have a look at the content of some of the stuff that they're printing.
James, anything to add?
Yeah, I suppose for us, it's been a kind of a balancing act in terms of the opportunities. You know, we've progressed them on the demand side. We've really tried to grow the market and get supply to match. So trying to recruit growers in line with our kind of growing output. Well, that's been a kind of a bit of a balancing act. We did grow an awful lot this year, so we've actually gone to the stage for next year. Some growers that we've been implementing quotas. So I suppose, yeah, we're just kind of taking each kind of cycle as it comes and trying to be cautious around growth as well ourselves. But we are very optimistic, and the growth has been there the last 10-20 years for us in organics has been fantastic from us from a business point of view.
Yeah, good news story. Vincent, have you anything to add there on the
No, I don't have much to add on that. Like, I agree, it's a balance act between your conventional production and what's coming to organics as well, which is an important market, and it's going to grow. Obviously, there's a fair wind behind it too. Like, so we need to make sure we've markets for it, like if we're telling farmers to move down the route, and there clearly are. Listening to Seamus, there's good markets and there's growth in those markets.
Yeah. Okay, there's plenty more questions and we could go on forever, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. So I'm going to hand it over to you, George. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Odile. I was just listening there with interest the whole way through the thing. I'm not a big expert when it comes to organics by any matter of means. I suppose there were 2 or 3 kind of themes that came through all our speakers tonight. The first one that came across is to do with scale, and size matters, and scaling up seems to be an important challenge for the people here on the business in terms of making it viable for them for the future. But what was more important, I suppose, is that there seems to be pent-up demand and huge growth potential across all 3 sectors there that we discussed here, that we covered here tonight. And you could see it in Seamus's presentation at the start there as well. The demand is there, particularly in continental Europe. That's one of the challenges I came across, and it's a challenge across all 3 sectors again. And you're all looking at different ways of dealing with it. Maybe less so with James, is the whole issue of seasonality, but certainly with beef and milk, it was a challenge maybe that need to be overcome to some extent. But the common theme across all 4 presentations has to do with optimism. It has to do with the vision that the future is fairly bright, and that there'll be demand there for the product that they're producing for the organic market into the future. So with that, I'd like to thank Seamus, John and James and Vincent for 4 really good presentations and very honest opinions, and some of the comments coming back would suggest that they were really appreciative of your presentations. And lastly, but not least, I'll have to thank Odile, a council member on our own team here, for Odile did the heavy lifting on this one, with Barbara, our office manager in the background, supporting us all. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll thank you for your contributions. I'll wish you a very safe, we're going to say safe journey home, but at least a safe night anyway in the nights ahead, and the very best of luck. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye now.